Welcome to the Spirit of Truth video podcast. Joining me today is my good friend Robert Sarmast. Hey, Robert. All right, well, we got a lot to talk about. He's been a long-time student of the Urantia Book, so stick around. It's going to be awesome. Welcome back. So thank you for joining us. And like I said, joining us today is a longtime reader of the Urantia Book, wonderful student of history, wonderful student of Jesus and his life. And it's just such a blessing to finally meet him and share his talents with you on this special day, the Master's birthday. Welcome, Robert.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right. So, Robert, you know, you've been so influential to so many Urantia Book readers, myself especially. You know, I'm sure you're used to hearing a lot of people giving you accolades about your work in history and mythology and literature, but it really has made a big impact on myself and others. And I really wanted to just take this public opportunity to thank you for all that work, because whether you know it or not, sometimes some of the seeds that we plant here, we don't know where they fall, but sometimes they fall in really good ground. So thank you for all of your hard work.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
All right, man. So tell us what's new in your world. I would like to maybe share some things of your past with people, but I know that you've recently done an interview where you were kind of sharing your perspective through the Urantia Book on a magisterial mission and what that might look like. I know that you always have your finger on the pulse of what's going on in society and always tying it in with the origin, history, and destiny of our society and our planet. So I just kind of want to just get your pulse. What's going on with you, and how are you doing?
I'm doing fine. I'm actually doing much better than I did most of my life, which just people that don't know me, just to have a brief introduction. I was born in Iran. I lived there till I was 11. Once the revolution happened, we came over here. I have a very diverse background, and I think that's what kind of gives me the flexibility and the adaptability that's needed for some of the work that we're doing today. I was raised by a Jewish grandmother. My mother is Muslim. I was raised in the East, but I grew up in the West ever since the age of 11. And so that kind of gives me a very interesting perspective, I think, that it's given me a sort of a well-rounded approach. So most of my life, I was traveling. About the age of, I would say 18, I got the call. And so it's God called me at a pretty young age. It kind of ruined any kind of material desires that I would have wanted. Materialistic drives and ambitions went out the window in the early 20s when I decided that I couldn't go on with life unless I knew the answers to riddles, the mysteries of the universe. What's the meaning of life? Why are we here? And so forth. And that started me on a very wild adventure that still goes on today. I read everything there is to read. I've traveled all over the world. There was a 20-year period that I never was anywhere longer than 6 months. Finally, in the mid-1990s, I found the Urantia Book, and couldn't believe that after clearing out whole libraries and bookstores for decades, I had never heard about this book or come across it. It was back then, it was in a blue cardboard box with just the word Urantia on it, without any description. And you couldn't even look at the book. You had to break open the box. You had to buy it. So
Oh, man.
they admitted a way that you couldn't get it unless somebody told you about it. And that's why didn't. But anyway, that catapulted me to new levels of consciousness. And so I've been studying it for a good while now, about 27 years. And we did some expeditions to find the Garden of Eden.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that was in 2004 through 2007. We did 2 expeditions, pretty scientific expeditions, probably the most scientific expeditions to look for Atlantis ever, using side
Absolutely.
scan sonar and deep sea waters. And for the last 12 years, I've been working on, I really wanted to know, Derek, why this book, this revelation, hasn't been more popular, hasn't reached the masses. Why is it so isolated? Why is it just appealing to the seekers and metaphysicians and theologians? And that was about 12 years ago, and that led me down a very particular field of research in the Urantia Book that has brought me to where I am today. And where that is a very different direction than the Urantia Book has taken, the community has taken in the past. It's more about creating a new and expanded gospel, and specifically intended to reach regular people that are never going to read the Urantia Book.
Okay. So a more outreach, but kind of beyond the scope of what the community is used to as the normal receiving community of this type of knowledge. So what are some of your tactics of doing that?
Well, my tactic is to actually listen to what the Urantia Book asks us to do,
Okay.
which over the last 12 years has, it's dawned on me that we haven't been doing it. A lot of the things they say, we just let it, in one ear, out the other.
Okay.
Some of it we've been very hesitant, if not obstinately, if not, just absolutely ignoring or resisting. And I think that this research that I've done in the last 12 years has brought me to a very good understanding of why we are where we are, and what we need to do to change our approach, our angle. We've made some just absolutely tremendous mistakes.
Really?
And yeah, just colossal. And I'm not into blame. I'm not interested in going over errors. Although, in a way, unless you know your errors, you cannot climb out of the pit that you've fallen into. So part of what I do is bringing out, highlighting these errors that we've made so that people can see it and thereby become able to go down a different road, a road that the master asked for in his life, that the Urantia Book asks for, that we've never done. We've just completely ignored what they've asked us to do because of certain issues, certain weaknesses in the human mind that stop us from being able to fully comprehend, much less do what they ask us to do.
Yeah. I just can't help but think if, maybe your background has allowed for you to have a experience that gives you this perspective that maybe a lot of Westerners don't have. And that might allow a balance of interpretation of some of this stuff. What do you think?
Yeah, both the cultural background as well as genetic background. We're told that all the different races have their own particular way of seeing things. And so I do think that I can perhaps, because of my international, multiracial, multicultural background, be able to highlight some things that might be difficult for people living in the West, particularly because secularism is just so pervasive here. You know, you're swimming in it. I always wondered, you know, they say you can't talk about God at the dinner table, politics, God, and where can you talk about God in the West?
I know, right?
So there's
I know.
basically don't ever talk about God.
I know.
Which, you know, when I went to Cyprus, I'll give you an example. When I went to Cyprus, I was already used to Urantia Book being very uh, controversial and kind of something you don't bring up with just anybody, and getting weird looks from people talking about these things. But when I went to Cyprus, I was really surprised that when I brought it up, it wasn't a big deal.
Really?
They were like, oh yeah, of course, Revelations, and you know, oh sure. Instead of giving me this look like I come from Mars.
Yeah, well, what is it of this Western, I call it narcissism. It's like this materialistic and spiritual narcissism, because it's saying, it's like, in our culture there's no room for a higher authority that can still be benevolent, and that anyone who claims to even speak of it is speaking outside of their jurisdiction because they don't hold a title in order to speak about these things or something like that.
It does seem to be a barren wasteland in some ways for spiritual progress. In some ways, you know, it's just because we've grown up in this society where denying God is called enlightenment, right? I mean, we literally
Yeah.
call the rejection of God from the Renaissance the Enlightenment. It's pervasive. And I think if you've lived here your whole life, not understand it really, because you're in it. You're swimming in the bubble.
Yeah.
Other places, they have different problems, you know, but this pervasive secularism is definitely a stumbling block.
Yeah.
And, but anyway, I do hope that I can bring a different perspective for you today and maybe help us to chart a new path, something that actually helps this world instead of just sitting around and helping other mystics, other seekers to get a broader understanding, a more in-depth understanding, which is all good and fine, but that cannot be our sole function in this world. That's not what Jesus asked. That's not what the Urantia Book asked. Right? And yet, that's all we've ever done. Very stubbornly. And he mentioned, you know, I remember when I started this 10, 12, 15 years ago, talking about possibly getting the gist of the Urantia Book or the gospel of the Urantia Book or changing it in any shape was heretical. People attacked him viciously.
Sure.
We do have some blind spots in this movement, big time. And I think I'm at a position now where I can list them for you.
Yeah. Well, you've been around. You know, you actually have experienced this movement. It's not like someone coming from the outside and saying, "Hey, you guys are this way." You actually are steeped in it too.
Yeah, I was there when the foundation was suing this person or that person and trying to hold the copyright, and the split with the fellowship, and the mayhem that ensued from all that persists to this day. It really broke up our drive.
Yeah.
And I don't think we've ever recovered from it.
Yeah.
Let me give you an example, because we don't have that much time.
Yeah, the stage is yours, man.
I'll give you, I don't want to go too far into this. I'd rather talk about what I'm doing now, but I think it's important for us to realize our past mistakes in order to go on. And again, I'm not here to blame anybody. You know, my belief What the Urantia Book teaches is that we're here to make mistakes. We were created to make mistakes. God wanted to make us perfect, perfect world, perfect everything, perfect people. He would have done that. But this is an experimental planet where everything has to be learned through mistakes. So there's no blame here. Don't get upset.
Okay.
But here,
Promise.
there are a few clues in the Urantia Book that tell us that they knew exactly what was going to happen with our community and how this revelation was going to be treated. I looked for them long and hard, and I think I found a few of the best ones. The best one is probably 195.9.6, where we're told modern civilized men dread the thought of falling under the dominance of strong religious convictions. Thinking man has always feared to be held by a religion. When a strong and moving religion threatens to dominate him, he invariably tries to rationalize, traditionalize, and institutionalize it, thereby hoping to gain control. That, in a nutshell, is exactly what's going on in this community for the last 100 years. Control. Modern civilized men, what are they talking about there? Us.
Sure.
Dread the thought of falling under the dominance of strong religious convictions. You can see that in this movement. It's anything but religion. We hate religion.
Right.
We hate organized religion. We hate word religion. We hate everything about religion. Even though the book itself says that evolutionary religions, even the worst kind, are the scaffolding for the civilization that we have today, for everything. Everything that we call civilization is here because of these imperfect, sometimes horrific evolutionary religions. And yet we are under this, cultural slavery, this viewpoint where religion is in and of itself evil.
Yeah,
And that's affected even the Urantia Book readers.
Oh, I agree. It's almost like a cultural thing where you look at, if you don't have the creativity to build upon that which is already established, then destroy that which is already established. And that doesn't work, man. That's not how the universe works. It's always building upon. And so if
that takes us to,
oh, go ahead, please.
That takes us to the second quote from 97.10.7, where we're told this has ever been the era of the religious leaders. Seeing the evils of the institutionalized religion, they seek to destroy the technique of group functioning. It's telling us right there, okay? So what it's saying, this has ever been the era of religious leaders. That would be us. Seeing the evils of institutionalized religion, they seek to destroy the technique of group functioning. And that's a very interesting choice of words. Not to ignore, not to evade functioning. They seek to destroy it. So they actually become active in making sure that group functioning doesn't happen.
Whether they're aware of it or not, because it could just be mindlessly taking
part.
Yeah,
they think, everybody has good intent.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Nobody thinks they're wrong. Hitler thought he had good intent.
Right.
But you think in his mind, he thought what he did was wrong? No. Adam and Eve had good intent. Even Lucifer had good intent. His banner talked about the brotherhood of man and how he was a friend of the angels and humankind. In his mind, what he was doing was the right thing, best thing for everybody. So we have to be very, very careful about intent. Good intent is partly responsible for this mess we're in with what Eve did and what Adam did. They did this in perfectly good intent, and yet they destroyed the lives of billions of people. So because, going back to that first quote, men dread the thought of falling under religious convictions. They have always feared to be held by a religion. And when a strong and moving religion threatens to dominate him, he tries to rationalize, traditionalize, and institutionalize it, thereby hoping to gain control of it. The key word here is control. So if you look at what's happened in the last century with this movement, it's all about control. Copywriting it, who can publish it, who can distribute it, who can translate it, where it goes, who can read it, who should not read it, putting the trademark on the Michael's emblem, and then using it as a seal of approval for which organizations we think would give a good representation of the Urantia Book. What should the Urantia Book, how should it be presented, who should present it, what they should say, what they shouldn't say. The whole thing, aside from translations and the study groups, 90% of all of our efforts in the last century has been exclusively based on control, exactly as that sentence says. Because modern man doesn't want to be held by religion. So what he do, he tries to control it. I'm going to control this so it doesn't control me. And that's exactly what we've done. And we've made the main error of the religious leaders, which is to destroy the technique of group functioning, which is just absurd. Because how are we going to get this world to a better place without group functioning?
Well, do you think any of that has to do with the fact that maybe since the Urantia Book is so focused and centered around the life and teachings of Jesus, that in society that maybe some people have like a cultural embarrassment about, gathering around that? So it's like religion minus Jesus. And so it's just like this secular organization ideology that then you can control mentally, but it's not really in the heart yet. Something like that.
Yeah, it's a lot like, Jesus in traditional Christian churches. In Christianity, you just have to love Jesus. You don't have to do what Jesus did. You don't have to experience God for yourself. All you have to do is love Jesus, and you go about your daily life of no experience, no personal experience, and you set somebody up there to tell you what to do, what not to do. And then you put some some statues of Jesus around for decoration.
Right.
It's the same thing. I'm not going to try to figure it out.
Okay.
I've been trying for a long time. But I can see in the revelation that they knew exactly what was going to happen. They told us. This is the mistake that usually religious leaders make. This is what they do. They try to control. And then to top it off, in 176.3.7, we're directly told, it doesn't get any more direct than this. You're not given truth to crystallize into settled, safe, and honored forms. Let me just go ahead. So it says, what a sorry sight for successive generations of the professed followers of Jesus to say, that's us.
Yeah.
Regarding their stewardship of divine truth. Who is the steward of the divine truth here? Or who has it been in the last century? Self-appointed, of course. Foundation. They're directly telling us what a sorry sight for the stewardship of divine truth. Here, Master, is the truth committed to us 100 or 1,000 years ago. They said this 100 years ago. We've lost nothing. We have faithfully preserved all you gave us. You have allowed no changes to be made in that which you taught us. Here is the truth you gave us. But such a plea will not justify the barren steward of truth in the presence of the Master. In accordance with the truth committed to your hands, will the Master of truth require a reckoning.
Right.
So they're telling us they knew 100 years ago exactly what's going to happen. They say, what a sorry sight that in 100 years people are going to say, here's the Urantia Book that you gave us. We've allowed no changes to be made. Here it is. And we're told that is, that's, in the celestial viewpoint, a major failure.
So when you say there were no changes made, are you implying changes to the text, or are you implying
any changes?
Enlarged, expanded view of the gospel, or efforts?
Change it by what they mean. What they mean by change, I'll read you the next two quotes.
Okay.
To help you understand what they mean by change. They don't mean change the text, change the
No, okay. I'm just trying to clarify.
Obviously what they're talking about. So we absolutely, based on those quotes that I read for you, just completely ignored those warnings. made exactly the mistakes they said that religious leaders make, did exactly the errors that stewards of truth make, and tried to control this thing just as they outlined. Now, let's listen to what the revelation itself is asking us to do, which we never did. Okay. We're still not doing it today. It's still met with hesitation, if not outright hostility. Here's what the Urantia Book says. The religious challenge of this age is to those far-seeing and forward-looking men and women of spiritual insight who dare to construct a new and appealing philosophy of living out of the enlarged and exquisitely integrated modern concepts of cosmic truth, universal beauty, and divine goodness. Such a new and righteous vision of morality will attract all that is good in mind of man. The religious challenge of this age. It says it right here, direct. That's our challenge. This is one of the most pivotal sentences in the entire book.
Okay.
This is our religious challenge. Have we listened to it? It's been almost 100 years. No. Have we constructed this new and appealing philosophy of living out of the Urantia Book? No, we have not. It's never been done. Why? Because that's considered change.
Now, how much of this do you find tied into the individual self-mastery change? You know, it's like as you have transformed individuals, then you have these transformed organizations. Maybe we're going like head first in this organization instead of this idea of a bunch of spirit-born individuals who are then coming together in whatever their creative ventures are, you know?
Well, these institutions were set up long before either of us were born. And their very function was control and this allowing any kind of change and just controlling anything related to the Urantia Book. And that has pretty much destroyed any movement that we might have had. What was set up was completely wrong. Instead of looking at this, humanity has this tendency not to look at the revelations, but rather look at these human beings who represent that revelation. So we have the Torah, and then we have the Talmud. Torah has the law, but the people are listening to the Talmud, which was one of Jesus' main faiths, right?
Yeah.
The Bible says one thing, but the Christians and others are listening to their pastors or priests or popes or what have you, even when they directly contradict what the actual scripture says. Right? We all know that. So I can see that also happening with us.
Yeah, totally. Me too. Yeah.
So we have here the religious challenge, it says, is to construct a new appealing philosophy of living. Nobody's ever done that. But what are we listening to? Some purported channeled message saying, what do they call it?
Pleiadians or something?
No. No, it's actually right from the beginning, this thing came out, publication mandate.
Oh, okay.
Where it said just, nothing's going to happen for your age, for your generation. All you can do is translate and then just sit there, don't do anything. Wait, in a few thousand years, things will get better. How? We don't know. It's just automatically going to happen. So
trust the plan. Yeah, trust the plan. Yeah. Sit there, get comfortable.
Yeah.
don't grow. Don't change.
Just sit around, read the book, study it together. Don't talk about it.
Well, that's one of the things that I appreciate about you is that you're a man of action. It's not real unless it's actualized. And I think with that comes then this spiritualized reflection that a human goes through. And in there, then that's where like the human religion starts to form, like the person's reflection spiritually of their like broad experience, and then how they then manifest that into the world. And I feel that maybe what I'm hearing is that you're kind of telling us that revelation and Jesus and the universe is reflective of maybe a little bit more self-accountability and rigorous discipline or accountability towards growth and self change, self development, self transformation of the spirit. And perhaps maybe we're not seeing that, as you talked about earlier, that we're in such a secular society too, that a lot of that has kind of creeped into the psyche of religionists, quote unquote religionists even, you know? And so that's why I always harp on, like, are you trying to fit in with the material kingdom, or are you trying to fit in with the kingdom of God? Because you got to get that straight first. You got to get the kingdom worked out first.
You're talking about the first mile versus the second mile. So I don't think we've had any problems with self-correction, self-improvement. Where we seem to stop is the second mile, which is actually the most important part, is taking that knowledge, taking that wisdom, and artistically feeding the sheep, feeding it to them in a way that they can consume. Okay, so I always say we take this 2,100-page massive tome that barely a handful of people in the world are interested or capable of reading and comprehending. And we just want to give this book to even sheep, even people who have no spiritual learning, that are never, ever going to read this book. Okay, let's just face it. Guys, it's been 70 years. Can we get together on this? The masses are not going to read this book. Okay? It's been 2 generations have passed. Can we get beyond this level?
Okay, so to do what? What's next?
The next is actually doing what Jesus asked and what the Urantia Book asks.
Okay.
The religious challenge is to construct a new and appealing philosophy of living. Where is it?
Right.
I don't see it. Do you know of one?
Do you feel that you've constructed your own personal new philosophy of living for yourself?
Well, we've been working on it with groups of people for over 12 years.
I mean, just for you, Robert Sarmast, like, you know, you're doing your thing for your.
Well, no,
your
I mean,
own
here's
religion.
where the art comes in. Sorry, repeat that. What?
Well, you know, you've developed your own new philosophy of religious living for yourself. Well, and then looking at the group to do likewise.
I think anybody who's dedicated student of the Urantia Book has formed that philosophy of living. But this isn't a philosophy of living for mystics and the seers. What they're talking about is such a new and righteous vision of morality will attract all that is good in the mind of man. They're not talking about us. Let me go to 195:10-16. The great hope of Urantia lies in the possibility of a new revelation of Jesus, with a new and enlarged presentation of his saving message, which would spiritually unite in loving service numerous families of present-day professed followers. Okay, so the religious challenge is to create this new and appealing philosophy of living, and the great hope is to a new revelation of Jesus with a new and enlarged presentation of his saving message. What was his saving message? Was it a giant metaphysical tome you can read?
Right.
His saving message could be understood by 5-year-old children.
Sure.
Little kids couldn't understand it. Let me ask you something. You know, they say, well, Jesus didn't want to write anything down because he didn't want to have something that becomes, you know, a source of idolatry.
Sure.
Well, why didn't he have other people write it down?
Like take a note, write this down, Matthew.
What would we be doing if we were in his day?
Nowadays, yeah, it'd be like jotting down.
What would this community be doing? It would, you know, it's very clear. It would say, have somebody at his side 24/7 that writes down every single word that drops from his lips, going to inscribe it, multiply it, translate it, and distribute it throughout the world. Right?
Sure.
It's not what we're doing with the new revelation.
Yeah.
But why didn't Jesus do that? He never asked anybody to write.
Because it had to be written on everybody's heart, every individual heart,
and
of that spirit.
Present it to humanity in a language that they could understand.
Through demonstration.
Through preaching, through living, all of it. But it came through human beings, simple human beings who were taught and then sent out to relay that message as best as they understood it. And as they conformed it to the times that they lived in, the culture they were presenting it to, and the mentality of the people. What are we told? You have to so shine the light that people understand. You don't just give them this blinding light, shine it right in their face, which is what you're doing when you're giving them this massive metaphysical revelation. That's not what they asked us to do. They never asked us to do anything like that. So the things that were done, were never asked for anymore. I don't see anything in there about study groups, holding this book, not being able to change it. And by change, again, they're talking about simplifying, which is an absolute, I mean, maybe these days that old school thought is a little more relaxed, but that was absolutely forbidden throughout the first several decades, if not the first century of this revelation. Absolutely forbidden that you should simplify it, that you should change it in any way. The only thing we're allowed to do is take this book and give it to other people as is. You don't explain it, you don't simplify it, nothing. Give it to this. This is not what the Urantia Book has asked. This is a man-made perspective and philosophy, which is listed as one of the great errors that religious leaders make.
Got it. All right. So we've gotten our punishment. Thank you, Robert. We got our scolding, like the prophet from the wilderness here telling us to turn back.
Hey, we're supposed to make mistakes. Don't get down on yourself. Don't look at the past. No regrets. We are here to make mistakes. We've made them. But where it gets dangerous is where you don't learn from your mistakes. Making mistakes is fun.
Yeah. Well, doing the same thing over and over, or just quitting. So I don't want to quit. I'm not going to quit. We won't quit. There's no paralysis of the will in the kingdom, and nor are there victims. So that's why I would like to find constructive, positive things today on Jesus' birthday. And I'm so blessed to have you here to get to share this. I will drop a funny anecdote. Sometimes, since we have an aged community in the Urantia Book Fellowship, at least, and they'll call the office. And I do a lot of history work too, as do you. And sometimes I'll have an article in like the Fellowship Herald or something like that. And since there's an older community sometimes, and our last names are similar, Samaras and Sarmast. They'll think I'm your son. They're like, "Are you Robert's son?" And while it's flattering, there's a couple consonants there that are different. Yeah. But I do appreciate that there's people there who can look into the future like you. I tend to do this myself. It's taking on the origin, history, and destiny, and seeing what worked, what didn't work, ditching what doesn't work, keeping what did and what does, and kind of always being adaptable and flexible into the next age, however that presents itself. So it seems to me like you were kind of concerned about what is New Age evangelism? What is the new way that we get the gospel message out there, especially in this time where we're kind of isolated from one another? So I know personally for me, this is what I'm doing. This is my New Age evangelism, and this is what I felt led and called to do. And so this is my duty to stay loyal to, is, broadcasting this message of my beliefs of Jesus and the gospel and the good news. And I'm just wondering how you see some of this, like the technology and some of the things that you're talking about, what we need to get doing. How do those start to play together, and how are we assisted by some of this stuff?
Well, one thing that's always bugged me is this community's reluctance to do things online. And, it's not just this community, it's the world at large. It's the older generation. They're not into digital. They think you're missing something with personal, human to human contact and being together in the same room. And I've always said, you're going the opposite way of the world. The world is moving completely in a different direction. And it's going to be, by the time my kids grow up, it's just going to be a completely different world. This thing of human personal interaction is great, but it's not feasible. We're scattered throughout the world. And I think one thing that's going to come out of this virus is rapid advancement of technology and putting us to, in touch with each other through video and having a broader field of people to choose from for various tasks and being able to do them online without requiring localized representation. So I definitely see that as a possibility. I can already see how schools are going to change. Why should we have one teacher who's really great at Yale teach just 100 students when we can broadcast what he's teaching to 1 million people?
Right.
Why can't we have an online university where it's not just the local teachers, but you get the best teachers from every country on earth?
Yeah.
People who are best. That's where things are going. And I do intend to employ those things. One thing that I'm really working on right now with groups of other people is doing exactly what the Urantia Book asks. For once, just listen to what it says. And I don't know why people have trouble with this. Just follow the instructions. When I started researching this, I started to notice that the Urantia Book is actually asking for something very particular. There's a section, the nature of cultism section, that probably lists it in the most categorical and complete way, but it still references some things in a very subtle, mysterious way. They don't make things easy to understand. But with my knowledge of this book, as I took various pieces of this puzzle from throughout the book and put them together, I started to notice that they're asking for a very unique and definite thing to happen. That they want a new, what they call a skeletal structure around which grows true religion, which is personal spiritual experience. We don't have that structure. We have the structure for ourselves. We've institutionalized ourselves with the foundation of fellowship. Not today's foundation, but Sadler's foundation made every single mistake that the Urantia Book outlines as the usual mistakes that institutionalized religious organizations make. He made every single one of them. And right now, I'm really just geared on creating this thing that they ask for, which is a new and appealing philosophy of living and a new revelation of Jesus with an enlarged presentation of the saving message. Those two sentences are saying the same thing.
Yeah, they can work together.
They work together, but it's so subtle. It's so easy for it to just go in one ear and out the other. So you could read that and say, oh, a new and enlarged presentation of the saving message. Oh, they're talking about the Urantia Book. No, they're not talking about the Urantia Book. They're talking about a new and enlarged presentation of his saving message, his gospel. His gospel was simple. You could fit it in one page. Children could understand it.
Well, it seems to me what I'm hearing when you're reading that is they're looking for a demonstration. So they need you to demonstrate this.
It does need to come through a human being. There's another section in there that says even the highest spiritual or religious doctrine in the world is absolutely powerless to change men. That unless the spirit of truth breathes upon it, it's absolutely powerless. It's one of my favorite quotes, basically, what is the highest religious doctrine in the world? It's the Urantia Book. So it's talking about itself. It says this book is absolutely powerless to change your world, as it has been. It has to come through human beings. And so everything that they're asking us to do is everything that we've been dead set against for the first 100 years of this revelation. Religion is bad. No religion should come out of it. It should not be changed. It should not be simplified. And it needs to be completely dominated and controlled. And any group functioning is to be destroyed on site. These are the tremendous mistakes that I was talking about. They are what has brought us to this place.
So moving past our mistakes while keeping in mind creating a new philosophy of living, how do you foresee that physically manifesting? What's the actualization of that?
Well, what they are asking for, and I have to say that it took me 12 years to understand this, not to mention another 20 years behind it. It is going to perhaps seem difficult or unusual or unsettling even for some people. But what they're asking for is some kind of what they call a living organism of the invisible and organic spiritual brotherhood of humanity. That's always been around.
Mm-hmm.
It is invisible, it is organic. The Most Highs do rule the world through the cosmic reserve corps, people, humans, spiritual leaders and thinkers in the world. That's how we are controlling the destiny of this world. We just don't realize it. They work through us. And what they're asking for is a sort of a fluid organization that organizes the dissemination of this new and philosophy of living, new and appealing philosophy of living, and the enlarged presentation of a saving message, or as expanded gospel, as they say. Some kind of an organization that's completely dedicated to reaching people that will not, which is probably 99.99% of the world.
Yeah.
This world changes through the masses, not through a handful of mystics. It's the mystic's job, it's the shepherd's job. Take this pure elixir, which is really hard to handle, even for the most brilliant minds on earth, and so shine it that the average person can get the gist of it. The average person is not interested in all the details that are fascinating to us. They want to know how to live better lives. They want to know who God is. They want to know they have a relationship. The central core of this new gospel that we are soon going to present to this world is that you are the living child of God, personally created by the maker of heaven and earth. You're not some sin-stricken, isolated, cursed, worthless individual. You were personally created by God. That was Jesus' the most important and central part of his gospel. You are the sons and daughters of God, and you repeated it over and over again. When a person hears that, it's really magical. You should try it. You're putting the creature directly in a relationship with their creator, not as somebody that should be scared of, not somebody that is looking at you in an angry way or is ready to send you to hell or destroy you and your family or your country, but as your father, the being that actually created your personality by hand. You're handmade by the creator of all that is. To give them that connection, which is what Jesus did. This was the crux of Jesus' gospel.
Right.
We're going to present it to them with this timely presentation of the fact that every single human being on this world is special, is created by God, has rights and privileges, and can attain immortality, can attain God. And we will promise them that we are not here to tell you what to do. Our promise is that if you do A, B, and C, you will personally experience God. Don't believe us. Here we are for your support. Here we are for your learning. We want every single person in this world to do what's in the best interest of every single person in this world. Not just what's in the best interest of your race or your gender or your country or your religion. This will be presented under the title of FOGMO, Fatherhood of God and Brotherhood of Humankind. Change your ways, change your function within your small circle or a larger circle, national, international, whatever way you have, wherever you are. Do what's in the best interest of the entire human race, regardless of country, religion, or race. That is the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man. And that's the only way this world is going to get better. And it starts with you. And beyond the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man, belief really at this point is not that important. One of the most important things in Urantia Book is when it tells us that one day you'll learn how to base a movement based on goals instead of creeds.
Right.
Which is, when you really get into that, what it's asking is really an amazing request, because we don't have any such thing. We've never had any such thing. A religious movement based on the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man that is interested in goals, not beliefs. And it says, once you provide this basis, the lowest common denominator of Fadmal, belief beyond that is irrelevant. What do I care what you believe beyond that God is the Father and every soul in this world is a brother? You can believe whatever you want. We'll get to that detailed material later. For now, let's stop killing each other.
Yeah, it's like you're kind of saying, look, we got to get back to the basics of our initial beliefs here, and then everything will kind of align around that in a more productive, sustainable way.
Not to create something that's in competition with evolutionary religions, something that's based on goals, not creeds, something that appeals to the entire species, not just the seekers, and to construct this new and appealing philosophy of living in a way that's going to attract. That's the So we're just going to do what they ask us to do. And I hear all kinds of people saying, oh, it's not going to work. Or, oh, we've tried things like that. No, we've never tried anything like this. Nobody's ever done this. I don't see anybody appealing, creating, constructing a new philosophy of living.
Hey, speak for yourself, bro. I'm trying to develop mine.
Well, yeah, but I mean, doing it in a collective way, not just sitting by, you get what I mean. So that's kind of where we're at right now. And I'm going to take it to the end. I'm not interested. I'm not even concerned whether it's going to have an effect. I know it's going to have an effect, but I'm here to do what they ask us to do. I don't care about the consequences. The rest is consequences, God's.
Yeah, amen.
The book asks us, don't ask questions. Don't overthink it.
Yeah.
Construct this philosophy of living, present it to the world in a way they can understand, in an appealing way, and it's coming at a time when the whole world is sick of racism, nationalism, and religion. The time not doing
there's some low-hanging fruit that's just ready to feel and hear the truth, hear the good news.
Timing.
Yeah,
it really is.
Well, it reminds me of that one part in the Urantia Book where, and I'm totally going to mess this quote up, but like Jesus is speaking to the apostles and he says something along the lines of, you will thrive in the kingdom when it's under attack. When it's like under attack, when the kingdom is not thriving. But when the kingdom is nominally accepted, then you will have your greatest spiritual challenges in the kingdom. Because it's saying, if you get, like you're talking about, you get lazy because it's kind of like nominally accepted, you can kind of just go haphazardly about things. And then, but the real challenge comes when your life is on the line. Like you're getting thrown to the lions or whatever, and you show your faith throughout the end, you die, whatever, it happens. But here, we don't have that direct pressure. And that's, again, why I think that your life history allows you to have this broadened viewpoint, broadened perspective to see where one can come from and where others might be at, to really like have that philosophy of living that's just so real. It's visceral,
Right. It has to be, and look, this world is starving for that philosophy of living. Mm-hmm. People are leaving these evolutionary religions in droves. The concept of nationalism, racism, and religionism is dying. Our world is becoming one in a material way. Okay, international trade, commerce, international communication. Somebody sneezes in China, this world, the financial system falls.
Right.
So the old days are gone of, with caveman. We've been living with this caveman approach to life for hundreds of thousands of years. You go to another cave, you take their stuff, you steal their stuff, you bring it, you kill them, you enrich yourself, you get a bigger cave, then you go conquer the next cave.
Right.
That does not work anymore. This world is now one, which some place is going to affect your cave in a very detrimental way. So we've become one in a material sense, but spiritually, we're fractured. The skeleton in the system is broken in a million pieces because of racism, nationalism, and interrelation.
And rebellion. I mean, let's not forget what we're dealing with here. Also.
Yeah, and then we have this crazy guy running around trying to mess things up top of it.
Mr. Terrible PR guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's another thing that I was always like, I'm kind of active on Facebook. I know you're somewhat active on Facebook, but I always appreciate a Urantia Book reader who isn't afraid to like pull the veil back a little bit, you know, especially like your generation. Like you guys, you protested the Vietnam War, you know, like you're trying not to die.
I'm not that old.
Well, the crew, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that community you're speaking so intimately about, you know, like there was a lot of a new and enlarged philosophy of living kind of going on in that generation. And then kind of what you're talking about is that there's maybe it's like pacified in a way spiritually that isn't like turning the world around. And I was thinking about the Urantia Book talking about the apostles didn't get all of Jesus's teachings, but they got enough to flip the whole Roman Empire upside down just by being evangelists.
After they changed it.
Yeah, I mean, even that alone.
Yeah, Abner didn't change it, and he's gone. Paul did change it because they noticed that his message was dying. Nobody was accepting it. It was too much for even. It's too much for even now. Now try to go to 2,000 years ago. I mean, it was just light years ahead of its time. But it was only accepted once it was diluted. And you can say, well, we don't want to dilute it, we don't want to change it. Well, guess what? They're not going to accept it as is. That's pure medicine. That is supposed to be diluted by you, the physician, and fed to your patient in a way that they can actually
digest it. Yeah, good analogy.
That's our job.
I like that. Yeah.
You know, it's like we're like these shepherds standing around feeding our sheep with steaks. Why doesn't it? Why are these sheep not eating food we give them? What's the matter? Maybe there's something wrong with them. Maybe they're stupid. It's food, sheep, eat it.
Yeah.
But it's actually we're the ones who are being stupid. Sheep don't eat steak. They eat hay. They eat grass. You have to feed them what they eat.
Well, what you're talking about is this like quality of intelligent service, intelligent ministry, because I remember Jesus warning his apostles that, you know, don't stifle when your heart wells up for feelings of service for your neighbor, and go towards that intelligent ministry that you can serve them. And I feel like even the Urantia Book talks about how at first the struggle was for a quality of life, for survival, essentially. And then the next coming age, which you were essentially smack dab in the middle of, is for a quality of thinking. And so we have this higher quality of thinking, even in our ministry, that we have to be wise as serpents about.
Exactly. I think, you know, we are moving that way. I was really surprised, you know, while we're constructing this new philosophy of living and talking about how every human being has value and worth and is loved by God and so forth. While we're doing all this stuff, I was listening to the convention the other night. Kamala Harris was talking about how each person has value and each person has. The timing on this is phenomenal. This world is reaching a plateau of some type. We're told about it, that we're quivering on the brink. If we're successful in creating a simplified gospel, expanded, not improved, but expanded for this and directed to this area, these people of these times, we could be on the cusp of doing something magnificent. And I'm so sorry, I do have to get going. I have to go to work.
Yeah, man. Yeah, well, we'll have to continue.
We can talk for hours.
It's fun. Yeah,
Maybe we'll have a part 2.
Yeah, we should, because I'd like to know what you see coming.
Maybe next time we talk, we'll have it ready to go. We're working on it now.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Great. All right. Well, then maybe we should say our goodbyes now. I know you got to go work.
Yeah. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and I definitely want to do a part 2 to this once we have more information that I can show you what we're creating, what we've been
Okay.
working on, and maybe get some feedback on what you think we should better stay
Yeah.
away from. Okay.
Yeah. I look forward to it. And I'm
Thanks
coming
so
up with
much
some.
for asking me
Yeah.
to come there.
Thank you, Robert. It was awesome, man. Thank you. Have a great day. Merry Christmas. Happy Jesus' birthday.
Merry Christmas. So great to do this on Christmas Day.
Yeah. All right, brother. Hallelujah.
Okay. God bless. Bye.
God bless. And thank you guys for joining us. We got a lot more people coming up. Wonderful people doing great projects. And we look forward to sharing them with you. So thanks again.